Hey guys, how are you doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel. And today, surprise, surprise, we're going to talk about Metroid. So, Metroid has been all over the news circuit over the past week, of course, because of these weird, random, unsubstantiated rumors or quote-unquote leaks from a not very reputable Twitter account that discussed some sort of weird confirmation that they apparently had about the Metroid Prime Trilogy finally coming to the Switch, as well as this random story about Super Metroid potentially getting a remake in the ilk of Metroid Samus Returns. Very weird kind of stuff. I mean, it's not like it's terrible news to hear. We, of course, want these things to be true, but not something that I think we can believe. And I discussed it. I made a video about it that I think was a pretty good conversation. You guys seem to really like it. But beyond that, I also made a few days ago a new Q&A where I answered a bunch of questions from you guys on Twitter, and I got a really excellent question that also related to Metroid Prime 4 and the Metroid Prime Trilogy. It was a lot of fun to answer this question. I always get a lot of questions with my Metroid questions with my Q&As. You guys always want me to talk about that stuff, and it's a lot of fun. It was a great question, and it's kind of something that I wanted to really elaborate on a little bit more. You can see the question here. I'll go ahead and read what it was. It came from Thomas Sanders on Twitter, and he asked me, do you think Metroid Prime 4 could succeed in the market today if Metroid Prime Trilogy HD doesn't exist? There is an entire generation of gamers that have never before touched Metroid Prime before, and they might not be willing to start at Part 4. Now, this was an excellent question. I really, really enjoyed it. There's a lot to pick apart here. It was very well worded, well asked, well thought out. I just loved it. And I did, of course, spend about 2 or 3 minutes answering this question on that last video, so I gave kind of my quick thoughts, because I had like 9 or 10 other questions I was answering on that video. But as I even stated in the Q&A, I kind of felt like it's worthy of making a more nuanced and longer conversation about it, because I think that there's a lot to dive into here, and that's kind of what I want to do today. So ultimately, do I believe that Metroid Prime 4 could succeed in today's market if there's no re-release of the Metroid Prime Trilogy to catch a lot of new Metroid gamers up to speed on the series and the franchise and the gameplay and the story and all of that? So overall, as I said in my Q&A, yes, I do still think that more than anything, Metroid Prime 4 is probably still going to succeed no matter what happens around it, no matter what Nintendo does. I think it's going to be a pretty big hit. You know, the only thing that could really hurt it, in my opinion, is if the game is just bad. You know, I also stated that in that Q&A. I do think that if the game just sucks outright, that is the number one thing that could actually kill the game's chances. But I don't expect that to happen. I'm sure that most of you guys don't expect that to happen. So if we just remove that from the table and we consider all the other factors, including if the Metroid Prime Trilogy doesn't release, I still overall believe in this game to be a success. However, that doesn't mean that there isn't something to the idea and something to the question here. I do also think that if Nintendo were to release the Metroid Prime Trilogy, which I'm so sick of thinking about because I just am sick of the roller coaster of emotions that the game has put us all on over the past 2 years, you know, but at the end of the day, if they did release a Metroid Prime Trilogy, I will say that I do think it could very likely aid in the game being that much more successful, and I think it could only be good for the release of Metroid Prime 4. And I think that you have to think that, you know, there are going to be, just as the question stated here, there are going to be a ton of people who are going to be the market for Metroid Prime 4. A lot of people who will want to buy Metroid Prime 4 and play Metroid Prime 4. And a huge amount of them very likely have probably never played a Metroid game, or at the very least might not have ever played any of the first 3 Prime games. I mean, that series ended over a decade ago. The first game was, 17 years ago in 2002. And what's interesting about the unique position I think Metroid Prime 4 will find itself in is that now that we're in the Switch era, I think we've seen a lot of gamers either come over to Nintendo for the first time, you know, regardless of their age, if they're very old or very young. Maybe they've just never been into Nintendo, but the Switch came out and was so great and cool and awesome that they finally decided to buy a Nintendo device. Or we also have a lot of people who might have like come back to Nintendo because they were previously fans, but maybe they jumped ship for a while. You know, a lot of people in the Wii and the Wii U years kind of jumped off of the Nintendo bandwagon, you know, and we know that the Wii sold incredibly well, right? So it's breaking records. It sold 100 million units, and that's very true. But I think that with the Wii, we also saw a lot of people who maybe did buy a Wii initially turn out to be disappointed with it, and so maybe jumped off of the Nintendo bandwagon because of the Wii. And then we also know a lot of people just were not interested in the Wii U at all. And so I think that the Switch also brought not only new gamers to Nintendo, but even, old, reformed Nintendo gamers probably came back to it. And so there's a good chance that, a lot of these people, which could make up, half of the Nintendo Switch audience, maybe. I mean, it could be really that many people. A lot of them really probably didn't play the Metroid Prime games. And so here comes Metroid Prime 4, and they might be a little bit intimidated by the fact that it's part 4. And so maybe they're like, I don't know the first 3 games, so I'm out. To me, that is a very real situation that Nintendo has to consider and has to be thinking about when it comes to Metroid Prime 4. I'm sure that a lot of people who love their Switch and they're like, oh, I love my Switch. I love all these great Nintendo games that comes out for it, and it's just so great. I want to buy all these games, and oh, here comes a new Metroid. Like, I know Metroid, right? That's a huge famous series. That's been around my whole life, and apparently it's like great, and all the games are awesome. So I definitely want to buy the first Metroid for my cool new Nintendo Switch. Oh, but it says it's part number 4, and I don't know anything about the first 3 games. Like, what happened in the first 3 games? I have no idea, so, as much as I'd like to play this Metroid number 4, I don't know the series, so I guess I'm just gonna have to pass. I mean, truly, you guys, I think that there's a great chance that we could see that happen if Nintendo doesn't do something to sort of, grease the wheels, so to speak, by releasing the Metroid Prime Trilogy games on the Nintendo Switch. Now, obviously, there's a few ways that Nintendo could release the Prime Trilogy on the Nintendo Switch, but I think that, of all the ways that we would love it to happen, a complete full HD remaster remake with new content and all these control options in a physical package with all 3 games and new menus, we would all love that. Give us the $60 physical with all the bells and whistles and remade graphics. But that might not be what Nintendo wants to do, and if you want to know how likely it would be for Nintendo to bring the Metroid Prime Trilogy over to the Switch, even though I've personally written it off, all we have to do is look at the Wii U, you guys. We have to remember Nintendo released for $20 in digital-only fashion the entire Metroid Prime Trilogy from the Wii in standard definition, no less, with no remaster, no polish, no bells and whistles, no nothing. For $20, they just put that thing on the Wii U's eShop. It was a mindless, simple, easy, no effort thing for them to do, and they just did it. And so you would have to think the bare minimum we can expect from Nintendo, the least amount of effort we could possibly ask of them to do, would to bring that thing over to the Nintendo Switch. It would be insane for Nintendo to not be willing to do at least that. Yes, like I said, we want the HD graphics, we want the remaster, we want the new control schemes and all these bells and whistles, and we definitely want it physical for sure, right? I know that we want that. But at the end of the day, if Nintendo didn't want to take the time and money and effort into doing something really awesome like that, even though they would make that, they would make it back for sure as far as money goes, we should at least be able to expect them to take the stupid standard definition version, $20, just put it on the Switch's eShop. I mean, it's so obvious and simple and low effort for Nintendo to do that they could probably do it by accident. I mean, they could just be like, oh, everyone went to sleep at Nintendo's headquarters last night and somebody's elbow accidentally pressed the Metroid Prime button, and so I guess the Metroid Prime Trilogy is up on the Switch eShop for $20, so there you go, have fun. I mean, it's that simple. And in a world where that Wii U digital version exists, I just can't imagine that Nintendo won't at least take the lazy way out and just, port that stupid thing over to the Switch. Like I said, one person can probably do it in 20 minutes, I'm guessing, right? So I have to think that, we have to think, I should say, that at least that is going to happen, if not something better. Maybe we get the Dream version where they do the HD remaster. Hopefully they release it physical. Yeah, we might get that stuff. But let's at least expect the damn standard definition digital only version. For a long time, I've also stated that I think one of the other reasons it would make business sense for Nintendo to bring the Prime Trilogy to the Switch, which by the way is something we all need to remind ourselves, there really is no reason for them not to do it, there are only reasons for them to do it. And one of the benefits I've long said is that, I expect Metroid Prime 4 to have a pretty unique control scheme, and, if it does release on the Switch with the Joy-Cons, I expect them to be incorporating some pretty cool Joy-Con features, hopefully, probably motion control, into the game. And if they do that, it would probably behoove Nintendo to want to release a Prime Trilogy to get people up to speed, Metroid newcomers up to speed on the story and the gameplay and everything of the Prime games. And if they also take the control scheme that's going to go into Prime 4 and implement that into the first 3 games in a Prime Trilogy, then they're also preparing newcomers for what that kind of gameplay and control is like, because it's very unique for Metroid Prime. Whether you're playing the GameCube originals or the Wii Control remaster stuff, like, all of the control schemes are very unique for Prime, and I think that it would be smart for them to re-release these games to kind of show people what it's going to play like. However, if we bring it back and focus on my overall opinion here, I mean, let's look at the question again. Will Prime 4 succeed if there's no Prime Trilogy? Okay, so I just spent a couple of minutes talking about why the Prime Trilogy makes sense and probably is going to happen. I mean, it's just got to happen. However, it might not. And the question is, what happens if there is no Prime Trilogy? And I'll reiterate what I said at the beginning here. I still think Metroid Prime 4 is going to succeed, and it is going to be a critical and commercial success. I think that Nintendo knows that this game has to be great. It's why they were willing to delay and restart development. And I think that they know that the series was damaged a little bit by Other M and Federation Force. Even though I like those games, I understand the damage that they did, and I understand that they were divisive and why people don't like them, and that's fine. And so I think Nintendo knows this, and it's why they're willing to put all the money and effort into Prime 4, and it's why they're willing to take as much time as necessary to make sure that it's really great. And because of that, I think they're going to put, their typical unstoppable Nintendo marketing blitz and budget behind Metroid Prime 4. I think the campaign for it is going to be insane. Nintendo can make any game a huge hit if they really want to, right? I mean, Splatoon 1 on the Wii U is the perfect example of how Nintendo, if they want their new game, whatever it is, to just be a massive hit, they can make it happen. They can do it. They can sell it the right way. They can market and advertise it the right way. They can make it appeal to the right kind of Nintendo gamers, and it's going to be a huge hit. And they're going to do this with Metroid Prime 4. And I don't expect the game to suck, like I said in the beginning, which is the one thing that I think could hurt the success. And so if there's no Prime Trilogy, I think Nintendo is still going to make sure that this game is really a huge hit. Now, one of the ways that they can do this that I don't think a lot of people have considered would be if they did something crazy and actually didn't call the game Metroid Prime 4. What if they, especially if there's no Prime Trilogy, what if they decide to just not put the number 4 in the title, you guys? I don't want that to happen, and I don't really know if I even expect it, but I think it's something worth maybe talking about and considering, that maybe they just, at the time that they finally re-reveal this game to us and they actually show us what it is, what if they say, hey, here's the game that, it was Metroid Prime 4, but now we're pleased to reveal to you the official title, Metroid Fancy Pants Samus Adventure, And so the 4 goes away, and it's just called Metroid something else. And if they do that, it does kind of, like I said earlier, grease the wheels, so to speak, for Metroid newcomers to feel more comfortable stepping into the game and being willing to buy and play it without having to play the first 3 Prime games, because they're not going to be so focused on the intimidating number 4 in the title. Again, I don't want this for the sake of continuity. I want my Metroid Prime, Prime 1, Prime 2, Prime 3, Prime 4. I want it to have the number 4 in the title. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, right, if it has it or not, as long as the game is what it's supposed to be, and if it's a good sequel to Metroid Primes 1, 2, and 3, then it won't really matter. But I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see, and it's something to consider that Nintendo might actually do. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, Metroid Prime 4 would only benefit from a Metroid Prime Trilogy release on the Nintendo Switch. I think that there are, like I said, only reasons to think Nintendo will bring the Prime Trilogy, and there are really no reasons to think they won't, other than the fact that it's taken them for freaking ever to do it and to talk about it and confirm it and show it. And it is really annoying and frustrating, especially if, some of us have been privy to behind-the-scenes information about the fact that it seems to have been something that Nintendo's been planning on a long time. I've definitely heard a lot of things behind the scenes that's made me very excited. And there has even been some public statements in Twitter accounts and discussions who have talked about the fact that they've known it. Not even the Sleeky Pandy thing. I'm talking about more reputable people last year were talking about it. So there's been reason to believe it's going to happen. But, I do still want to stick by my overall kind of opinion here and state that even if Nintendo doesn't release the darn thing, I just believe in Metroid Prime 4 enough. I think it's going to be a hit because Nintendo wants it to be a hit. That's my feeling. Those are my opinions. Those are my thoughts. And I want to hear what you guys think, man. I gotta hear, discuss this whole thing below. What do you think about the Prime Trilogy and Prime 4? And how much does Prime 4 need the Prime Trilogy to exist on the Switch to make it the success that we know it deserves to be? Definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. And with that, I think I'm going to call this video a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of 2 Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.